Hey guys, so we recently had the release of Albaz Strike and the rise of Branded Despia, so as usual I wanted to bring this tier list based on Dueling Book data, and at the time of recording the ban list did not release yet, so keep that in mind. Now as a reminder, this list is based purely on what's happening on Dueling Book only, so sometimes it may not match the tier list you'd expect based on IRL events. Now I'm just going to lay down how the tier score was calculated here, as well as how the scores are categorized into tiers, and I will link the original video where I go over this calculation in the description below. Not going to go over them anymore so that I don't become repetitive, so you can just pause and read if you want to, or just check out that original video to understand better. So let's just get right into it with tier 1, and starting us off with the best score is Branded Despia. Now there's a big limitation with YGO for this deck at the moment because I have to rely on using just Branded and Branded Adventure, so we may be including some other decks that are using the Branded engine. Nonetheless, I think we are aware that this deck is tier 1, and if you saw my monthly meta analysis for May, the top ranked players are indeed running this deck as well, and it also won the last 2 ICS events. After that we have Floowandereeze, which let's not forget is still a tier 1 deck as well, and have some really blowout and unfair cards like Harpy's Featherstorm and the Wind Barrier statue. In my recent meta analysis, this was actually still the most played deck among the top 25 ranked players, although we'll probably see that transition over to Branded Despia in the coming weeks. Next we have Eldlich, and we do have some limitations with YGO here as well, since it can't accurately identify Cyber's Eldlich. So this is including all Eldlich variants, including the new Branded Eldlich as well, which really gave it a nice boost. It's still played quite a bit among the top ranked players as well, and because the Eldlich engine can go with a variety of decks, you'll see this deck a lot online. Next in tier 1 is the return of Swordsoul. Pretty interesting since the last couple of months this deck has sort of fallen in favor, and instead people were running the 10E piles instead, but I have been noticing more Swordsoul decks being run. Great synchro deck and is incredibly consistent, although with people running Dimensional Barrier more because of Branded Despia, this card will also affect this deck as well. Now surprisingly, Prank Kids was categorized as tier 2 this month based on its score. I personally think it's definitely a tier 1 deck right now, and I'm sure almost all of you watching are thinking the same. I think the reason why the score dipped this month is that for some reason, in the last 7 days this deck was not played very much on Dueling Book among all players. Not sure if people just got bored of it recently or something, but with the Brave engine this deck is definitely one of the decks to beat right now, so as I mentioned earlier, this tier list is purely based on Dueling Book data only and not based on IRL events. After that we have the Brave DPE pile, and this does have some YGO limitations as well, as I'm just relying on decks categorized as Brave Adventure as this deck, so it's not perfect. But we do know that this deck is still strong, although based on the last YCS, pile decks are not as common as before, but as long as DPE and Brave token cards are at full power, this deck will not go away. Next up is Brigade, and most of the decks here are probably the Branded type. The Albaz structure deck cards have now really given this deck a nice boost, and while it's not tier 1 like it was based on the last ban list, it's still very consistent and has a nice grind game, but can also TK as well. After that we have Skystriker, which can be played with or without the Brave token engine, although probably all variants are running DPE, has been a competitive strategy for quite some time with its spell focused strategy, and still seems to be getting some new cards here and there. Then we have Virtual World, so this has climbed up from the Rogue tier compared to last month. Let me know if anything's changed for this deck since last month. I'm curious to how it jumped up a category. The deck can be pretty bricky at times, but being able to set up Kaliga, Crystal Wing, and the Chooch Pop, and maybe even the Brave token stuff, that's pretty good. Then we have yet another reliable competitive strategy in Dragonlink. The deck is still sneakily topping YCS events, and the deck can also benefit from the Brave token engine. Can require a big brain to pilot well with its various combo lines, but Konami does love dragons, so I think any form of dragon based strategy will always be a meta contender. So for the Rogue category, we are once again starting off with Dogmatica Invoked. With the release of Albaz Strike, this deck can also benefit off of Branded Fusion very well, and is a strategy I've been playing recently too. It's also a really easy deck to learn, so can be a good starting point for new players, and has somehow dodged the ban list year after year when everyone's been sick of normal summon Alistair all this time. Then we have Ad Ignister, which has been one of the best rogue strategies on Dueling Book since the release of Lightning Overdrive. Sees play from the top ranked players as well, and some decks just really cannot out that arrival Ad Ignister and they just roll with it. Next we have Drytron, which can still set up an oppressive board if it gets to go first, and is probably being overlooked in the current format. The EVA ban didn't hurt the deck, but it's certainly far from dead, so watch out for them. Then we have a fan favorite deck in Dinos, which always makes it to the rogue level on my tier list, and is probably one of the best rogue decks out there. Can never underestimate Ultimate Conductor Toronto, and who knows, maybe they'll bump back Misk to 2 someday. Next we have DDD, which has been falling off lately after it made it all the way up to tier 2 in one of my earlier tier list videos. Topped at remote YCS, but I don't think it's topped since, and it is a big brain deck as well, and the release of DD Griffin really boosted this deck, but perhaps the hype has fallen and not as many players are trying the deck out anymore. Then we have Fantonite, which has fallen off since the last time I did this tier list. This deck has really been curious this entire format, since it was originally expected to be the best deck after the release of the last ban list, but has really been a disappointment in terms of IRL achievements. Still a strong deck and can't underestimate it, but surprised it didn't do better the last couple months. After that, we have another fan favorite in Salome, which is as reliable as they come and usually sees a lot of play among all players online. The deck can run hand traps and or even floodgates like Goza Match, but has also the OTK potential with update gem and access code. Maybe it will get circled back to 3 in the next list as well. The last spot in the rogue category goes to Altergeist, which has been rogue for quite a while but has never gotten back to its tier 1 status after it initially fell off way back. A trap heavy strategy that's pretty recursive and something you do see pretty decently often, at least on Dueling Book. Now for what I call the other category, we are starting off with Machina Infinite Track or Earth Machine, whatever you want to call it, because I'm not sure myself. The deck has some high attack monsters that it can bring out while being able to play under skill drain, so it has some potential for sure. Finally, we have Mystic Mind Burn in the other category. Not sure what happened, but this month the deck actually had a pretty high 66% win percentage, but that probably won't last for long. One of the worst decks to play against and probably leads to a lot of rage quits online from opponents on Dueling Book. Alright guys, so that was it for another competitive tier list. Hope you found that helpful. Hopefully the next ban list comes out soon, and hopefully it's another big list that can shake things up a lot, where we may see a completely different tier list for next month. As always, thanks to my patrons Eileen Dice Queen, Bolt Spider, Cybernetic, Brandon Jaren, Barrelord, and Spooky Boogie. Really appreciate your support. Take care guys.